On this episode of 12 Rounds, Coach ER breaks down the early struggles building a fighter in a coach's mindset. As the rounds become intense, I now start to see what makes a coach remarkable.
So the hardest years in the beginning, the hard years were like you deal with a lot of personalities as a coach, and it's difficult to kind of keep everybody on track or on the same page. And so part of being a great coach is understanding that not everybody's the same, And I think when I was a younger coach, when I was in my 30s, I didn't really see it that way, And at that time, I thought, when we started winning, I kind of got a little bit of a big ego, which ego is good in boxing, but big ego is very bad, And I learned that early on. I worked with some coaches that had huge egos that were terrible, and I watched them, and I said, "Damn, do I look like that? Like I can't be looking like that." And I was looking like that, I realized that ego kind of made certain fighters leave, and they would go to other camps. And I had to dig in deep within myself and realize that it was me. I also got to see, people's true colors. I got to see how some of these fighters are not loyal. And I said, I'm changing everything, and I'm checking my ego every door I get to. I'm gonna check my ego, no matter where I'm at, no matter if I have a world champion, if I have millions of dollars, I don't care about none of that. I'm checking my ego at the door. And I think my early struggles stemmed from that. Once I regulated that, everything kind of fell into place. It's tough leading fighters. It's tough, when you have to, get into a kid's head and teach them right from wrong, both outside and in the ring. And I could tell you one specific story where I was training Edgar Berlanga, and we were in the Olympic qualifiers, and we took a loss. And I could honestly say that day, I went home and questioned myself as a trainer. Did I belong? Was I doing the right thing? Could I trust myself? Was that kid gonna trust me anymore? Was his dad gonna trust me anymore? And it took a lot of prayer. Really, really, really dig deep and find out if this was meant to be for me. I did take a break from boxing during that time. I think I actually took like a good maybe 6 months off, something like that. And that was around the time when Edgar transitioned from amateur to pros. And so I had, I said, me and him were going through it. Like we were trying to get on the Olympic team. And so like when that fight ended, it was like I had time now to reflect and think. And I honestly was gonna be done with boxing. That's how hurt I was. And one day I was walking in my neighborhood, and this kid seen me. I had walked by a boxing gym, and this kid seen me, and he kind of ran me down, and he was like, "Yo, E, yo." He was like, "Yo, what are you doing, man?" And I was like, "Oh, what's up, man?" And he said he needed a coach, And I was like, "Nah, I'm done with boxing, He's like, "Nah, you can't be done, man. You great, man. You can't be done." And I was like, man, I don't want to get back into this, I just wanted to lead a regular life at that point. And the kid kind of dragged me back in the gym, and I said, "All right, look, I'll come on the weekends only. I'll help you out, but you got to find another coach, but I'll help you for now, And the weekend turned to 3 days a week, then the 4, the 5, and I was back in the gym, and that was it, And so at that point, it was like, you know what? I am made for this, and we started winning again, and I started getting my confidence back, and I think I needed that. I think that in anything you do in life, you kind of need that downfall, because that's where you really find yourself. You really know if you're really about that life or not. This sport, man, it will put you through the ringer, and you're definitely gonna go through things where you're gonna test yourself, who you are. You know, everybody watching you, and for me, you know, that loss with ED, with Edgar, that really changed my career, and I really haven't looked back since then. A young fighter comes to me and he asks me to coach him. It depends on a few things. I would say like a younger fighter, like a kid, a peewee, or an intermediate or JO fighter, you know, anybody a teenager under. What I really look for is good parents, you know, and that started, you know, actually just a few years ago, because I've dealt with so many bad parents in boxing. And I said, yo, from this point on, I'm gonna start interviewing the parents first, you know, because if I don't have parents they gotta be dedicated, number one, but some of them are too dedicated, where like, you know, they want to jump in the corner with you, they want to be telling you what to do, or nah, don't do that, or, you know, well, he does this, you know, and it's like, nah, man, like, you know, when my daughter used to do dance, and when I would go to drop her off, they would stop me at the door, and they would say, okay, you gotta stay here, sir. And the kid would go inside with her trainers or dance instructors. And I picked that up and I said, you know what? I gotta start doing something like that. You know, the next thing I look for is work ethic. You know what I'm saying? Like self-dedication, you know, self-motivation. Are you willing to do this? Do you really want this? You know, do you love the sport of boxing? When you go home, do you do boxing when you're home? Are you shadow boxing in your room? You know, are you doing push-ups and sit-ups, you know, before you go to sleep? Do you wake up and study film and watch old fights, you know? And then off work ethic is talent. Are you talented? Do you have it? Do you have what it takes, you know? Most kids don't. And it's not something talent you can't teach, but you definitely can mold a fighter that's not talented, right? Like you could get a kid that's strong-willed, hard worker, and you can make him a champion, you know? It's not always about talent. You know, a lot of times the most talented are the worst workers in the gym. You know, they're the ones that don't give you the most. And that's because they rely on that talent. So, you know, I look for a balance. I look for a balance of everything. The first fighter that I worked with that obviously that kind of showed my work to the world was Edgar Berlanga. You know, he was a teenager when he came to me. Just working with him, one thing about Edgar is he's a hard worker, even today. And so he made a lot of money in this business because he knew what he was doing. But he definitely was, in the amateurs, was a really great fighter, you know, and he was always in the top 3 in the USA boxing rankings, you know. He won a few national championships, you know. He was at the time he was a pure boxer, you know. He used speed, footwork, athleticism, a lot of stuff you don't see now that he's not using. But he's a little different. He's in the pros now, so he relies on more of his size and power. But always had a great jab, you know, and I just kind of like accentuated those things for him, you know. I kind of like gave him more to what he had, you know, and he had a good jab, I made it great, you know. He had good hand speed, I made it faster, you know. He started as he got older in his teenage years to knock people out, you know, which when he was younger he didn't really have, you know. He didn't have the power. And then you saw when he turned pro, 16 first-round knockouts straight, right? He really developed his power in the pros with the coach that he was with in the pros. So he was the first fighter that, yeah, people started coming to me and saying, oh, you worked with Edgar, yeah. And then from there, you know, I started picking up other fighters, and I always give flowers to Edgar for that, you know, for giving me a platform, you know, somewhere, a stage, per se, you know, where I could shine a little bit, you know. And, you know, that's my little brother to this day. You know, he still comes to the gym, you know, when he comes to New York, he comes to me. And I'm grateful to him for that. You know, if it wasn't for him, I don't know where I would be.
You are now watching Connect Sports.